Hi, I'm Warren Cornelius, and you're watching Breaking the Cycle on Open Studio. We'll help you make informed choices about the prevention, treatment, and recovery of substance addiction by consulting experienced professionals and finding evidence based solutions. Welcome. In today's episode, we're going to be chatting to Warren Lucas, an exercise scientist, who will be telling us more about exercise, goal setting, and structure, and how that benefits your recovery. Welcome, Warren.
Hi, Warren. It's good to be here. It's funny that we have the same name.
Tell us a bit more about yourself and the work you do.
Awesome. So I'm an exercise
Mhm.
scientist. I'm based at the South African Medical Research Council, particularly in the unit for tobacco, alcohol, and other drug research within the SAMRC. I'm also doing my PhD at the moment in exercise science at the University of Cape Town. And currently, my research is focused on using exercise as a treatment modality for young people in treatment centers, especially inpatient treatment centers,
Mhm.
in order to teach young people how to cope, learn physical activities, and yeah, possibly use those skills when they get discharged out of treatment.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So interesting. Tell us a bit more. What is exercise?
Exercise is the regular movement of the body
Hmm.
with the attempt to develop strength, physical endurance, as well as flexibility.
Yeah.
It has to be regular, otherwise, it's not really exercise. I
Mm.
mean, people could participate in exercise once every now and then, but
Okay.
then it's just physical activity for the day. Exercise does require frequent um, exercise sessions with varying intensities and for at least 30 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
What are the benefits of exercise?
Oof, there's so many.
Mhm.
I could ring about 100, but I won't chew your ear off. The benefits of exercise is that mainly it improves overall physical and mental health. This is the reason why I'm doing the research that I'm
Yeah.
doing, especially because substance use disorders basically takes over mental and physical health
Mm.
at the same time. It's basically a dual epidemic
Yeah.
taking place in the body through the use of the substances. So we'll see overall benefits in breathing, overall benefits in sleep. We'll also see people start to lose weight if they were wanting to lose weight through exercise. And then, of course, improved metabolism. And that means that the body will start to use up all of the nutrients and calories that you consume on a
Mm.
day-to-day basis, and this helps the body to be fueled more
Yeah.
naturally. Yeah.
You said you were studying about how exercise influence or can be used in the treatment and recovery of substance use disorders. How does exercise influence your recovery?
Well, it definitely will be able to influence your recovery. Research has shown, and this is the thing about research, is that sometimes we don't get the full picture.
Okay.
Um, when we do research in any of the sciences, specifically health sciences, it's typically within an experimental setting and it's with that population only. And in the past, research has shown that certain frequencies, certain intensities, and certain time or durations of exercise would benefit recovery for certain substances.
Okay.
So for this research assignment, we are looking at how exercise could be used as an activity, a coping activity during treatment to being discharged from treatment. The thing about recovery from substance use addiction or substance use disorder and any other substance addictions is that a big trigger for SUDs is boredom.
Yeah.
And I think
I
it's
think more so in adolescence and youth. Yeah.
100%. So the onset of adolescence and puberty
Hmm.
leads to an increase in leisure time.
Yeah.
Leisure time is basically unstructured time that nobody really has any duties
Mm.
within. And because adolescence is a sensation seeking phase of
Yeah.
life, young people tend to pursue those types of activities for extreme sensation, and this could involve alcohol and other drugs. The problem is that the continuous sensation seeking behavior that takes
Mm.
place could lead to the development of a substance use disorder. So how exercise comes into play is that it may alleviate the levels of boredom that young people could be experiencing,
Yeah.
which initially led them to experimenting with
Substances.
substances in the first place.
Okay. So let's say somebody comes out of treatment, or whether it be adolescent or adult, doesn't really matter. Somebody comes out of treatment, they've been told they no longer can like socialize with their old friends. They've got to find a new way of like socializing and find new connections. How does one get started with exercise? Let's just say somebody comes from maybe a poor, there's different people. So people with resources that can perhaps go to gyms and things like that, as opposed to people who don't have resources.
Maybe I can touch on this in two different sections.
Okay.
So, for those that were in treatment, I think that being afforded the opportunity to go to treatment is very, very lucky.
Yeah.
So, inpatients at treatment centers become a part of a community
Yeah.
as such, and it's with that community that they can start to make decisions in order to avoid the people, places, and things in their original community where they live, where they reside. So that's one way that they could get started with physical activity as a group decision amongst their treatment community. And then, secondly, if it was a patient who had sought outpatient treatment, they could also speak among their outpatient community and start to um, find people who are like-minded who also want to start exercising, whether it's cardiovascular like running or jogging, or whether it's strength like on the weights floor. There are people out there that have similar interests, so it just really is based on the person to ask if they're interested in starting. Other ways could be to engage with, the city has got all of these outdoor parks
Yeah.
that are now it's sprouted across Cape Town, so that's quite cool. And these outdoor parks are there to encourage people to be a bit more physically active. If you don't have anybody in your immediate surroundings that is not really interested in physical activity, don't sweat. Going down to one of those parks, which are freely accessible, you'll probably meet somebody there that can start to do physical activity with, simply just by being in that environment.
Yeah.
That's one of the nice free resources that we've got in our city at the moment. Yeah.
We're going to have to break for an ad. We'll be right back after the break. Welcome back to Breaking the Cycle. We're chatting to Warren Lucas, an exercise scientist, and he's explaining to us how exercise can influence our recovery. Warren, before the break, we were speaking about what people can do, how to get started with exercise. Tell me, like somebody in their personal capacity at home, and they don't have access to a gym, what can they do to get started?
So this is an excellent question because with the onset of COVID-19 and the pandemic and everything, everybody was bound to the four walls of their house or their apartment and needed to find ways to keep themselves busy. And this is when the fitness industry started booming, I have to say, again. So the fitness industry goes in these, as like many industries. And a lot of these exercise demonstrations would take place on shows like the Espresso Show or any of the other talk shows and ads that come up on TV regularly. So that's where somebody can start to get some kind of resource for exercising at home. Exercising at home doesn't have to be costly. You don't need to be ordering big pieces of equipment from online stores or anything. You could simply use your household items. For lack of a better example, if you do not have dumbbells, you can use 2-liter to 5-liter water bottles. That does replace the need to go and get a dumbbell, because dumbbells are quite expensive. So that's one way. You could also use a bench or a couch to create a step for yourself so that you can start working legs. On the stoop, you can do standing calf raises so that you can work these muscles over here. So that's some of the ways that we can do exercise at home. And then, of course, running around your front or backyard if you've got one.
And it's, I suppose it would be useful to find people in your neighborhood that's kind of into walking or running and kind of create some kind of exercise club type thing.
100%. So a lot of communities already have these online groups that are, if I can say, trending. And these can typically be found on social media like Facebook. And it's these like community pages or groups on these social media platforms. So it really just takes somebody to ask, is there a running group that's taking place within my area?
Yeah.
And 9 times out of 10, probably 10 times out of 10, somebody will respond, because the whole idea behind exercising as a group, it improves safety for the people that's doing it. And as we know, in Cape Town, crime is rife at the moment. I think the pandemic created extra crime. So being safe during exercise is definitely important, especially for women and young children. And then, it's also fun to do it in a group, because then you start to make friends on a social level. That's who's not using drugs.
So often people coming out of treatment, there's small changes that they can make in their lifestyle, for example, not associating with people who's using substances, whether it be drinking or any other substances, not going to parties where there's going to be substances, just to keep themselves safe. What small changes can people make to their lifestyle to change their physical health?
That's also an excellent question, Warren. So we are creatures of habit, and I guess that's really the basis of addiction. We return to the same activity. It's ritualistic. It's comfortable, and there's some type of reward at the end of the day. Whichever it may be. But for people in recovery, the substitution from old behavior to new behavior definitely does need to take place. And for somebody who's struggling with getting into physical activity.
It's me.
It was me also for quite some time as well. I mean, I used to be an avid sports person as a youngster. And then in growing up, like, that continuity just ended, and then I started studying, and then I needed to get back. So getting back or starting physical activity is definitely a challenge, and I'm not going to downplay that in any way. But some of the small things that people can do is to possibly start with alternating unhealthier foods for healthier food alternatives. So if somebody wasn't eating fruit or veg every day, swapping something that's typically in their plate for a veg item is a small change that can be made. I know that sometimes we are also crazy about counting steps. So on average, I think a person's supposed to do about 5,000 steps in order to remain optimally healthy. So pushing that up by 100 steps every day, walking a little bit further, could also be a small way of improving your physical activity or getting started. Nobody really needs to start doing burpees and doing cleans and snatches like immediately straight
I have no idea what that means, but carry on.
These advanced exercises, because that's also the one thing that people get confused about, is we see all these people on social media and on TV doing very advanced exercises. So we as consumers tend to think that that's what we're supposed to be doing when we're exercising. But in no way can you go from being completely sedentary, which means being inactive, to being an advanced CrossFitter, for example. So starting with 1 push-up, 100 extra steps, fruit and veg is your first go-tos, moving that up to 2 push-ups, more fruit and veg, more steps, and then just keep incrementally increasing your physical activity like that.
So, in recovery, it's so important, like structure is very important in terms of getting up at the same time every day, having kind of a routine and regimented kind of lifestyle. How important is structure in exercise?
Very important. So you might remember me saying in the beginning that exercise is a repetitive thing. If it's not repetitive, then it's just a physical activity for the day. So exercise becomes an activity or an action that people in recovery start to depend on for an outlet for stress, anxiety, or depression, or any of these mental health conditions. So doing it once off is definitely not going to, eradicate all of that stress, anxiety, depression. So keeping it regular, like designating certain days in the week, Mondays, Wednesdays, or Fridays, or Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, for an example, could be a good way to have structure for your exercise training. Doing something that's minimum 30 minutes of continuous physical activity is what will constitute as an exercise session.
Is that 30 minutes per day?
Yeah, minimum, yeah, for us as adults. So 30 minutes per day for us as adults is what we need to be doing. And in those 30 minutes, I would suggest having fun.
Yeah.
So experimentation with the human body through movement is a very creative avenue for, especially for people struggling with any mental health condition, and allowing yourself to let yourself try new things in exercise. So if CrossFit stuff doesn't work for you, maybe Zumba or dancing works for you.
Well, then we're going to have to break. We have to stop for the ad break. We'll be right back after this break.
Awesome.
Welcome back to Breaking the Cycle on Open Studio. We're chatting with Warren Lucas, who's telling us a bit more about how exercise can influence recovery. Warren, so consistency, it's such an important part in people's recovery. And when I say consistency, it means like doing the same thing over and over every day, and not one day you're all in recovery and the next day you're just laying around doing nothing. How is that? How important is consistency in exercise?
So again, another excellent question. So consistency is really the hallmark of measuring progress.
Yeah.
So for people in recovery, waking up, making the bed,
Yeah.
brushing your teeth, getting a shower, brushing your hair, and being presentable are all signs of recovery or recovery behavior. And then continuously staying abstinent from alcohol and other drugs is another sign of recovery behavior. With activities such as exercise, consistency is also very important. On the aspect of exercise, for example, if somebody is wanting to improve the amount of push-ups that they're doing, they're going to consistently need to be practicing push-ups on the days that they are exercising. For somebody in recovery, exercise serves for that purpose of consistency as well as another purpose of consistency, in that it boosts the recovery behavior of the individual, because it's a healthier alternative to using substances or reverting to old behavior. So that's where consistency is mutually inclusive of each other in the exercise context and then exercise for recovery context, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. Tell us a bit more about how exercise influences behavior.
Behavior for the person in recovery or addiction. So behavior, when we look at the population that uses substances, there is the recurring nature of repeated behavior that leads to negative consequences.
Yeah.
I nearly said the demise, I'm sorry. Well, in many ways, the demise of the person on a physical, mental, and spiritual level, people start to lose functionality of their body, thought processes that, help to keep us present, concentrating, paying attention, those types of things. So exercise influences behavior in that it helps to develop new neural pathways and reward systems for the person that's engaging in physical activity. Of course, it cannot be compared to the type of high somebody would be getting if they were to use substances.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, substances have a very high release of dopamine and serotonin that is unnatural and very euphoric.
Yeah.
Exercise doesn't do the exact same thing, but it mimics and emulates those same neural pathways to provide some type of reward to the person. So for behavior, it helps to be a bit more disciplined. It also helps to create more of an attention span, because you do need to be careful while doing exercise, making sure that you're doing it the correct way so that you don't injure yourself. And then, of course, it helps to regulate emotional changes within the body and within the mind.
Okay.
Yeah. So exercise serves as a good outlet for that.
We were speaking about adolescence earlier on in mental health. Can you tell us a bit more about how exercise impacts mental health?
Yes, 100%. So there's been a number of studies. Actually, the academic world there's an abundance of literature talking about how exercise benefits anxiety and depression as standalone mental health
Because they're
conditions.
great risk factors.
Yeah. So when we're looking at substance use disorders, while anxiety and depression may be part and parcel of an addiction, anxiety and depression are also symptoms of substance use disorders as well. So it's very tricky to navigate the addiction model, disease model of a patient. But because all of this research has been done before, and we've seen that exercise helps to regulate or restore the natural release of dopamine and serotonin, and as well as endorphins in the brain, that definitely helps with mental health recovery. In addition, mental health is sometimes it's very stigmatized, and people with mental health issues are often perceived to be incapable in one way or another, whether it's physically or mentally. So exercise helps with improving the mental health status of the individual, and also helps to fight against the stigmatization of mental health issues in general. So that's one of the positives for engaging in physical activity, especially if you've got a mental health condition.
So it sounds like exercise can actually influence it can help prevention, it can help for treatment, as well as the recovery for substance use disorders. It's like can benefit you in a lot of different ways. Let's speak about how exercise impacts your physical, like how you look and how you feel.
Ooh, excellent. So in my research, I was doing a lot of reading in the NA-approved literature, and I think
That's Narcotics Anonymous.
Yes, Narcotics Anonymous approved literature, so that I could get a better understanding about addiction recovery from a non-scientific angle, which is very helpful because sometimes the literature talks about it too clinically, and those books have been written by addicts who have found recovery, so that's very beneficial. There was I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but there was a line in one of the books saying that when addicts find recovery, they put down the spoon and they pick up the fork. And it goes without saying that once a patient stops using drugs and alcohol, they become ravenous for food.
I can totally relate to that.
And it's almost an insatiable, you cannot quench it, you cannot satisfy it.
Warren, it looks like we've run out of time. It's been such a pleasure chatting to you about exercise. I wish we can continue this conversation. Perhaps we can come back at a later stage.
Definitely.
And we can continue the conversation. Please join us again next week when we'll be chatting about how family can be a better support structure. So till then, keep well.